Fans can't get enough of these iconic movie props and costumes, and they sold for so much money. Forget box office receipts. You can often determine how much of a cultural impact a Hollywood movie has made by how much its most famous prop has sold for. From pianos to proton packs to swords and space shuttles, here's a look at 11 of the most expensive movie mementos ever sold. Number 11. Jurassic Park's Velociraptor cage, $100,000. If you ever wish that Jurassic Park could be a real day out, then this is probably the next best thing. In 2014, the 7-foot-wide Velociraptor cage that can be seen at the start of the Steven Spielberg classic went on eBay, and pretty soon bids reached up to the $100,000 mark. It's not public knowledge who got their hands on such a mammoth prop, but they sure got value for the money. Alongside the cage, the company that organized the auction, Theme Park Connection, also threw in a life-size Velociraptor. This was apparently the same dinosaur replica that graced the 1993 blockbuster's star-studded premiere. Number 10. Ghostbusters Proton Pack, $160,000. Any child of the 1980s who saw spooky comedy Ghostbusters inevitably then pretended to be part of Bill Murray and Friends gang. And in 2012, one longtime fan got the chance to play out their fantasies more convincingly than others. But they had to fork out a small fortune to do so, $160,000 to be exact. So what did this aspiring Ghostbuster receive for his successful bid at the auction held by firm Profiles in History? Well, it was only one of the proton packs sported by the film's co-writer Harold Ramis's character Egon Spangler in both the 1994 box office hit and its follow-up 5 years later. We're not sure whether it contained a positron collider, though. Number 9. King Kong model, $200,000. The gorilla in Peter Jackson's 2005 take on King Kong may have been fully CGI, but filmmakers back in the 1930s didn't have the luxury of such tools. Instead, animator Willis O'Brien had to create a 22-inch model from scratch for the groundbreaking monster movie. And more than 70 years on, it was still intact. Well, sort of. Yes, in 2009, the rabbit fur that made up King Kong's coat had inevitably suffered the effects of decay since 1933. And yet the metal frame that O'Brien had constructed was still in good condition. As a result, the model fetched a far from shabby $200,000 when it was put up for auction. Number 8. 2001 A Space Odyssey's Space Shuttle, $340,000. Stanley Kubrick reportedly demanded that all of 2001 A Space Odyssey's smaller spaceships be demolished to prevent them showing up in inferior movies. Yet at least one of the sci-fi classics models somehow escaped such a fate. Yes, in 2015, Kubrick fans were left stunned when the Ares 1B translunar spherical space shuttle showed up in an English town. That's right, an art teacher who lived in Kubrick's Hertfordshire hometown of St. Albans had stored the model at his studio for more than 40 years. After being put up for auction, the presumed-to-be destroyed prop went for an astronomical $344,000. And after being hidden away for so long, it's now on public display at Los Angeles' Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Number 7. Lord of the Rings Sword, $437,000. The swords displayed in Peter Jackson's epic, The Lord of the Rings trilogy, continued to increase in value after the series ended. Firstly, the Sting sword, favored by Frodo, fetched $161,000 when it was put up for auction in 2013. And then the following year, Gandalf's staff went for just over double that amount. But the costliest sword from the money-spinning adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien classics belonged to Aragorn. The weapon used by Viggo Mortensen's character in the trilogy closer, The Return of the King, also went to auction in 2014. And one Middle-earth enthusiast paid $437,000 for the privilege of getting their hands on the blade dubbed Anduril. Number 6. Star Wars Lightsaber, $450,000. Owning this particular prop is the stuff of most sci-fi fans' dreams. After all, which Star Wars obsessive hasn't produced their own whooshing sound effect while pretending to do battle using a makeshift lightsaber? In the end, it was a man who actually worked on the George Lucas phenomenon that managed to get his hands on its iconic weapon. That's right, Star Wars producer Gary Kurtz kept two lightsabers made for the franchise in his own private collection for years before putting them up for sale. The first went for $240,000 in 2008, while the second sold for nearly double that amount 9 years later. Believe it or not, the buyer of the latter was none other than the museum chain Ripley's Believe It or Not. Number 5. Terminator 2 Judgment Day's T-800 metal model, $488,750. This particular prop was responsible for landing its designer an Academy Award. Special effects legend Stan Winston bagged the Best Visual Effects Oscar in 1992 for his work on Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and his piece de resistance was undoubtedly the full-scale android which helped transform Arnold Schwarzenegger into the lean, mean killing machine. Where the T-800 model in the original was made from plastic, Winston and his team decided to go metal for the sequel in order to make it both more authentic looking and durable. The impressive cyborg skeleton was put up for auction 16 years after its release, and it fetched almost $500,000. Number 4. Back to the Future's DeLorean car, $541,000. As you would expect, automobiles are often the most expensive movie props, and when it's a vehicle that appeared in one of the most beloved franchises of the 1980s, then you're talking about even bigger bucks. In 2011, Doc Brown's iconic DeLorean DMC-12 was snapped up by a Back to the Future obsessive for a cool $541,000. Sadly, it didn't include any time-traveling capabilities. But those fans without a spare $500,000 lying around didn't need to completely miss out on owning a piece of film history. Just 6 years later, DeLorean revealed it would be resuming production to build 300 replicas of their one and only model, and Marty McFly wannabes could take the wheel of one for a slightly more affordable $100,000. Number 3. The Wizard of Oz's Ruby Red Slippers, $666,000. The devilish price tag would suggest these ruby red slippers appeared in a satanic horror movie. Instead, they were worn in one of the most enduring family-friendly adventures of all time. Yes, at the turn of the century, one individual forked out $666,000 for the footwear belonging to Judy Garland's Dorothy in the 1939 classic The Wizard of Oz. Of course, this isn't the only pair in existence. Garland went through 3 others while filming the L. Frank Baum adaptation. Unfortunately, in 2005, the pair housed at the Judy Garland Museum in Grand Rapids, Minnesota were stolen. A decade later, the museum decided to put up a $1 million reward, which eventually led to the FBI retrieving them after an undercover operation in Minneapolis. Number 2. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang's Flying Car, $805,000. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang's famous flying car might not have been able to take to the skies in real life, but that didn't stop a very famous face from splashing just over $800,000 on the vehicle in 2011. Yes, none other than the Lord of the Rings director, Peter Jackson, spent a small fortune on one of 6 cars that were produced especially for the 1968 kids classic. Although Jackson can't use the car as an alternative to the airplane, he can still use it as, well, an actual car. That's right, this particular model was later fitted with both a fully functioning engine and proper UK registration. The Oscar-winning filmmaker has taken advantage of its roadworthiness to raise money for various charities. Number 1. Le Mans Racing Suit, $984,000. Steve McQueen is widely regarded as one of Hollywood's coolest leading men. So it's little surprise to learn that one of his most iconic outfits, the racing suit he sported in 1971's Le Mans, fetched almost $1 million 40 years after its release. Incredibly, it was originally given away for free.